Hey everybody, it's Tamika with Scrap the World, and I am here with another Scrapbook Pal video. We are starting out using Colorado Craft Company's stamp set, and this is called Happily Ever After. It's a beautiful wedding anniversary congratulations stamp set, and this is the time to be using and making these type of cards. Very beautiful illustrations and lots of sentiments to use for various events. We're also going to go with the coordinating die set from Colorado Craft Company, and again named Happily Ever After. The mouse is cut out, the tiny little cake, little present is cut out, so you'll definitely have fun with these little die cuts and stamp combos. The next thing we're going to pull out is a Spellbinders Delights, and this is called Victoria Corners. I really like this die, it's super elegant. And we're going to pull out another Spellbinders die. It's from Card Creator, and it's the A2 Divine Eloquence die. Lots of options with this die sets. Another one of my favorites is the Spellbinders Nestability Decorative Labels 8. And also Spellbinders Nestability Labels 28. All of these are great dies to have in your crafty arsenal. We're also going to be pulling in a Stampers Anonymous Tim Holtz collection stencil, and this one is called Shifter Baubles Layering Stencil, and Laced Flowers die from Spellbinders, one of my favorite laced flower sets. Also, one of my favorite black inks is from Gina K Designs, prints super dark. We're going to use a 12x12 paper and heavyweight cardstock, some flatback pearls, and some seam binding. All of these items came from my stash, so let's get started. We're starting out with an A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. We're also going to use an insert for the card base where you would stamp your sentiment. I use the Victoria Corners. I cut the shadows out in heavyweight cardstock, and then the layers, the fancy layers on the inside, I used a piece of that 12x12, a juicy, colorful piece to add to the inside since the inside is white. But it does add just that touch of dainty and a little bit of romantic when you're making this type of card. So we're going to put these corners on the layer that I have cut out, the insert on the lower right and the upper left, just to add a little bit of extra to the card. This not only adds a little bit of elegance and fanciness, but it also adds more stability to your card in the event that you're using a lightweight cardstock. I'm going to use some wet glue on the back of this and just tuck this on the inside of my card base and layer that there. And just want to make sure you center that. You can also use different colors and do another offset. Lots of possibilities here when you're layering the insides of these cards. And again, it adds for extra sturdiness. So wet glue is really good to use in this type of situation. You can't see like the glue tape on the fancy parts of the corners. We're going to pull out our stamp sets, and I'm going to use two things from the stamp set for today's card. I'm going to use a sentiment, and the sentiment that I'm going to use is wishing you a lifetime of love and happiness. I'm going to stamp that once off camera on a piece of scrap paper and then stamp it onto my card just to make sure I get a nice, clean, crisp stamp. And look how that looks. Super cute. And then I put it a little bit higher so that I can leave room for a handwritten message in case I want to do that. Now I'm going to take the cute little mouse hugging married couple, and I'm going to stamp that on a juicy part of my 12x12 cardstock. I cannot color, and I'm okay with that. But what I do is take my clear stamps and stamp them on some pretty paper, or I'll splash some splotch on it just to make up for that. And I think if you catch the right part of the paper, your stamp will look just as gorgeous as if you've colored it. So we're going to take the Tim Holtz stencil and we're going to lay that on top of some cardstock. Again, cut down a 1/4 inch smaller. This is a purple lacy cardstock, but I wanted to add a little bit of extra. So I am adding a little bit of paste from my stash, and I'm going to lay this on top of the stencil, Shifter Baubles, and I'm going to scrape across until those holes fill up nice and thick. And I run that over a couple times, peel back the layering stencil, clean it off so that it doesn't get crusty and it's hard for you to use a second time, and then go ahead and hit it with the heat tool. This whole process just takes a couple minutes. It's really, really easy if you use a nice, quick drying paste or stencil paste. And mine is homemade, so we're good to go there. So once that dries, I'm going to lay that on top of my card base. We're working with the front panel of the card here. And again, this is cut down a quarter, maybe an eighth of an inch smaller than the card. So I'm going to cut out the decorative labels 8, and I used the largest one of this die from Spellbinders, and I added some dimensionals on the back to see it pop up a little bit from that card base, since we added some stenciling and some texture to it. I grabbed a doily from my stash. I wanted to make a little bit of a difference between, or put a little bit something in between the two fancy dies, just to extract it a little bit. And then I add some pop dots to the layer that I'm going to layer on top of that. And this one is the A2 Divine Eloquence. And I just kind of offset that to the right a little bit. I always add a little bit of hot glue to the back of my pop dots to ensure its security. And then I wanted to add a little bit of this cheese weft or some tulle. I'm not sure what it's called, but it's like some webbing, mesh webbing. And it has like little polka dots. And it just adds a little bit more shabby, a little bit more romantic to the card. And I just let it sit there with a little bit of hot glue. I added some seam binding. I tied it into a double bow. I saved you guys the torture of watching me tie a bow and me the embarrassment. So there you go. There you go. You're welcome. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit and then add the last little layer that I'm going to add to this card. I know you're thinking it's layer upon layer, but it all comes together cute. And this one is the labels 28. Again, adding dimension to the bottom, adding a little bit of hot glue, laying that right on top of the other dies. And finally, I'm going to add a tiny bit of dimension to that last little mouse couple, and we're done with that type of layering. And it just adds a really, really simple elegance to your card. We're going to add a little bit of flowers here. I cut out the lace flowers, the smallest flower die 4 times, and well, extra, but I only used 4 of them. And I'm just going to pinch up all of the petals, and there are 5 petals. Just want to pinch them up a little bit, layer them on top of each other, add a little glue in between the layers, and there you are, having a super cute, quick and easy little flower to add to your card. And I decided that I'm going to use the pearls in 2 ways. I'm going to add a pearl to each of the 4 corners on the bottom layer of the card. And then I'm going to trim off a little bit more of that seam binding to not to have it hang out a little bit. And then I wanted to go ahead and add the flowers to that using hot glue. No dimension here, just straight up hot glue. And I add a little bit to the bow, the center of the bow, to kind of hide the knot, and then a little bit under. For some final touches, we have the larger of the pearl center to finish off the middle of the flower and finish off the card. I hope you guys enjoyed what I created. I hope it gave you some ideas and some inspiration. Be sure to check out ScrapbookPal.com, where you'll have a list of all of the items that I use and written instructions on how I created this. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.